We are back on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk, 1180, 1230, KGEO, 1410, KERI, 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and 3 times a week on the Internet. We have a fascinating guest on the line, Jake Wood, a former Marine sniper, a gentleman who is the CEO of Team Rubicon, who wrote a great book, Take Command, Lessons in Leadership, How to Be a First Responder in Business. So, Jake, let's talk about the book. I mean, it's I can't wait to get my hands on a copy of it. They didn't send me one yet. We kind of booked you real quick. But actually, Clay's sitting there putting up 2 fingers. Okay, get 2 books, one for Clay. Okay. You were talking in the prequel to the book, talking about high stakes leadership. Explain that. What is high stakes leadership?
I think that today's world is dynamic. I think that's pretty obvious. It's changing rapidly. Technology plays a huge role in that. I think at the end of the day, leadership in high stakes situations, high stakes is the opportunity to have, to take on an enormous amount of risk that has a high chance of failure, but in the case of success has the opportunity to be an incredible change agent, right? And that could be being a sniper on the battlefield. That could be deploying a team to Port-au-Prince, Haiti after the earthquake, but it could be leading a new project inside of a Fortune 500 company. It could be an entrepreneur, somebody that's taking over as the principal of an inner city school. At the end of the day, high stakes leadership means that the chips are on the table, and failure is a real possibility. And that's really what I'm trying to address in the book. How do you succeed in those situations?
Sure, and failure is not a bad thing. One of my favorite books is by Maxwell, and it's where he talks about failing forward. I mean, we're all going to fail, but the thing is, do you learn from the lesson, or do you just kind of sit there and not learn from it and make the same mistake twice?
Absolutely. I think, another great book on that is Eric Ries, who wrote The Lean Startup. Failing and not learning from it is really a tragedy that most organizations, most leaders find themselves caught up in. But if you can learn from it, I think that's really, really powerful. But, listen, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree that not failing is probably the better option. So how do we set ourselves up for success and maximize that chance?
Exactly. Now, your book talks about being a first responder. So you're drawing on your experiences as a first responder, right? How has that affected the book?
Well, I think that the positions that we find ourselves in as leaders at Team Rubicon is that, we are often it's not so much about being a first responder. It's about the scenarios that we find ourselves in. We're sending teams into situations that have limited information, limited resources that are changing rapidly. And so how do you lead in that type of environment? That's just not unique to a disaster zone. I mean, that's the same situation that an entrepreneur finds himself in. That's the same situation that a day trader at Goldman Sachs might find herself in. So, how do we make sure that we have a framework that's loose enough that allows us to work and make fast and good and sound decisions in that type of environment?
A lot of times, and I've noticed this a lot in business, people try to wait until they have all the information. Well, if you wait until you have all the information is going to change because, we're dealing in an environment where, technology and things are changing business every single day. So you've got your 80% rule. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to what you're talking about. Information is always going to be limited, and first thing you have to do is accept that, right? You need to be better at collecting information. You need to be better at turning that information into actionable intelligence. But at the end of the day, you have to assume and accept that you're not going to have perfect information, and you're not going to have half the information that you need. So you accept that. Now you got to move on towards the action phase. How do you work with that? I mean, the next thing you have to do is understand that with imperfect information, you're going to have an imperfect plan, but that's okay, right? And to the point that you mentioned, things are changing rapidly. Waiting for the perfect plan to develop means that by the time you start executing it, the assumptions that you base that plan off of have likely changed or proven wrong. So build a loose plan that allows flexibility, allows you to adapt to the situation at hand. And if you're trying to get from point A to point C, why don't you just get to point B first and reassess, right? Have a loose plan for getting to C, but let's step off from the starting line. Let's get to B, and then let's look at the situation again and see what it takes to get from B to C.
And, I can tell where that's one thing that the Marines taught you, because I have yet to see, in my time in the Marines and the people I know in the Marines, I've yet to see a plan go exactly the way it was designed. It just does not happen that way.
Well, and Patton has the famous saying of no plan survives first contact with the enemy. And
right.
I think it's the process is important in planning. It forces you to think through assumptions and what you need, but ultimately the plan itself is really inconsequential as soon as the rounds start flying.
Exactly. We're having a conversation with Jake Wood, author of a great new book, Take Command: Lessons in Leadership. So, Jake, when one thing I wanted to ask you about as far as leadership, how do you keep clarity of mind and purpose when you're surrounded by chaos? And that happens all the time in business as well as in the military.
It's tough. I think that you have to make sure that you're always exposing yourself to challenges in hard situations. And one of the early things that I talk about in the book is the power of preparation and preparing yourself really along three different pillars. Obviously, I think a lot of people understand that they see the college track and getting MBAs or postgraduate degrees as that continuing to hone their mental game and preparing mentally for what they face. But I think that we all too often ignore the other two pillars, which are the physical and the emotional. I think the physical preparedness, physical fitness is one of the easiest ways, of course, not just to maintain fitness, which is really critical just for overall health and mental health and emotional health and all of that. I think that's undisputed. But it's also the easiest way to introduce yourself, your mind, your body to challenges in a controlled environment.
Jake, I want to thank you for the time. I know you've got another engagement. Again, the name of the book, Take Command: Lessons in Leadership, How to be a First Responder in Business. I wanted to talk a little bit about that book. Again, I haven't seen it, but just the previews I've read of the book, I'm really looking forward to it. It's a positive thinking on leadership, based on his experiences as a Marine for a couple of years, a Marine sergeant, and a very successful Marine. To be number one in boot camp and number one through the training, I can tell you from being there and having lost that position a couple times, it's very difficult to be. You've got to be highly motivated. So I'm looking forward to his book. But in his book, he talks about some of the lessons. And one of the lessons is to be prepared. And that's something that, I'm surprised how many people aren't prepared when they go into business. One of the things I see as an insurance agent a lot of times is, I'll ask new businesses, as I'm writing their policies, what's your gross receipts? What do you anticipate doing in the next year? It's amazing how many people don't know that, or they don't know what their payroll is going to be for the next year. So, how do you determine if you're making any money on this, this venture or not? So you've got to be prepared. You've got to be able to analyze things. That's the other thing he talks about in the book. Don't be blinded by information overload or be blinded by what's going on with your competition. Analyze what's going on and determine whether or not it's a good outcome for you. And then you've got to make a decision. You've got to decide. And again, he was talking about the 80% rule. I like that because you're not going to have 100% of the information, and your plan's going to have to change because that's part of life, whether it be in business or life in general, or that was a lesson that I know Jake learned in the Marines. Is things are never working out exactly the way you planned them to be. So have a plan that's lucid enough to have the change, but yet a plan that's got some direction to it. And then the other thing is act. So, you've got to have relentless execution. You've got to turn around and just be able to execute the plan and be able to take a second look at that plan, like hover over it and say, okay, now is this thing working, or do I have to modify this, or do I have to get this thing to change to get it to work? So, I'm kind of finishing up the book for Jake, but I can't wait to read this thing. Lessons in Leadership, How to be a Responder, First Responder in Business. So by Jake Wood. And again, his website is Team Rubicon. He's the CEO of the team. So again, I highly recommend the book. And again, this is airing the week before Christmas. And I wanted to make one comment about James Hershon. I like his thoughts about what may happen. This is something that I think we have to take seriously at a government level, because the fact that North Korea could go in there and terrorize Sony by hacking into their system scares the you-know-what out of me. We will see you in 167 hours on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.